process. We stand at a crucial juncture in our journey towards achieving the objectives that were set exactly 30 years ago at the International Conference of Population and Development and the adopted program of action. With the current review process, it's imperative that we take stock on the achievements, confront the challenges, and we ensure that the relevance and continuation of the ICPD agenda is in front of us. And of course, young people at the heart of it. Therefore, we have a great panel of prominent youth leaders with whom we will discuss the progress made in the last 30 years in advancing the sexual and reproductive health and rights agenda, expanding access to quality education, promoting gender equality, building resilience, futures, and society, and a cross-cutting synergy of meaningful youth engagement. These topics are also the heart of the 5 thematic areas that we'll be discussing in Benin and at today's webinar. I invite you to actively participate, use the question and answer option throughout the discussion, and be bold in your dreams for the future that it's upon us. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Her Excellency, Ms. Diana Keita, Assistant Secretary General and Deputy Executive Director of UNFPA, who can open up with, as always, a word of wisdom and positive approach. Diana, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Peter. Dear young people, I hope you are, the bulk of this meeting to this morning. Buenos dias, bonjour. I am very, very happy to welcome you all to this second conversation in our monthly Let's Talk series. The monthly ICPD 30 talks are a space we specifically carved out to stimulate dialogue and hear from you people, you young people, and civil society partners whose voice are critical for the future of ICPD agenda. I know you all know what ICPD agenda is, and I hope some of you don't. And if you don't, ICPD, the International Conference for Population Development that was adopted in Cairo 30 years ago, the plan of action. Throughout this year, the 30th anniversary, we are going to have several conversations to celebrate the 3 decades of progress, to assess what is at stake, and most importantly, to look forward, positioning ICPD agenda in the future. And for us to position that, it's in your hands. It's definitely on your hand. Today's conversation is particularly important as it prepares us to the youth dialogue in Benin, Cotonou. Some of the colleagues will be there in Cotonou. And as this youth dialogue is happening in Cotonou, the young people, your peers from all over the world, will be joining Cotonou. But of course, not everyone cannot be there. So no doubt we'll have other conversations virtual to ensure that, we can cover the maximum people. The youth dialogue is designed to celebrate you as change makers, as development partners and custodian of the ICPD program of action. It will be a moment to hear your concerns and what you imagine for the future. Don't forget that we have the Summit of the Future coming up very soon in September. So this is the time to make sure that what matters most at the heart of the ICPD can be taken forward and get into the Summit of the Future. So your insight, your expertise, but most importantly, your wisdom of life at your young age is very critical for us. We have, as our main speaker, the remarkable young people who are among many others young people who help us conceptualize the key session of the youth dialogue. Thanks to all of you. You will continue your leadership role in Cotonou, and we look forward to really the outcome of those. Thank you for joining today as critical partners. What I want from you today is really, girls, boys, for you to achieve your full potential. So Cotonou is important for us. And during this panel today, my takeaway for you would be, what do you want from this? What do you want? Are you happy the way it goes? Or do you have another way to make it happier for all of us? How would you like that to be reflected in the future? How should we go about it? What are we doing wrong? Or what are we doing so good that we can make a difference? Anyway, I wish you a fantastic moment together. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor back to Peter to introduce our panelists and moderate this exciting conversation. Wishing you all the very, very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana, for these words of inspiration and also setting up the stage. But also let me quote you that exactly the Youth Dialogue is designed to celebrate adolescents and young people. Many of them are here today with us, but I'm sure they have many other peers out there, because the ICPD, the agenda is really in their hands and their ownership. And exactly as you ask, what do they want is what we would like to explore at today's webinar. And as we said, we have a great panel of prominent young leaders. I'll ask the 5 of them to switch on their cameras and we can kick off with the discussion. And meanwhile, while they're switching off their cameras, I can quickly introduce them. We have Lucy, who is a young public health doctor and committed SRH activist. As a focal point for the major group of children and youth, she works with young people to help them spread the advocacy and accountability efforts on the ICPD program. She's also had the national and global youth mobilization efforts on sexual rights and bodily autonomy, with a particular focus to access abortion, self-care, comprehensive sexuality education. Welcome, Lucy. We also have Gilma, who is Afro-Brazilian migrant in Buenos Aires. She's the regional coordinator of the Afro-Descendant Youth Network in Latin America and the Caribbean, representing Brazil and Argentina. She's also a researcher in the network of Afro-Latin American, Afro-Caribbean, and diaspora women. Expert in ethical and racial issues, researchers on gender, intersexuality, and racial discrimination. Active on the rights of Afro-descendant and migrant youth. Welcome, Gilma. We're happy to have you. Monse is 6 hours passionate professional from Guatemala, studied biochemistry and microbiology, with many years of volunteer experience and professional experience in international settings. She now leads the health and well-being educational portfolio at the World Organization of the Scout Movement. Her commitment in advancing global health initiative underscore her invaluable contribution to the international community. Welcome, Monse. We're happy to have you as well.
Buenos dias, Monse.
We also have Simone, who is a young Senegalese woman from a very passionate background on youth, gender, peace, and security. She is currently the program officer for Africa within the global network of women peace builders. And she also served as the African Union Youth Ambassador for Peace for West Africa. Welcome, Monse. Last but not least,
Simone.
We have Abdul Karim,
Merci.
Who is a young medical doctor and currently serves as the UN Youth Delegate for Denmark. As a passionate health and human rights activist, he has an extensive knowledge in this area. In his advocacy work, as part of his mandate, he focuses on issues to quality education, intersectional form of discrimination, and non-communicable diseases, including mental health. Welcome, Abdul. We're very happy that we'll kick off this discussion in the lead up to Benin next week. And without further ado, let me start with Lucy. Let's start with you. You have been quite engaged in track 1 on My Body, My Life, sexual and reproductive health and well-being. And of course, we are absolutely aware that in the past 30 years, sexual and reproductive health services, commodities, informations, and access to rights and promotion has been quite expanded, especially for the needs of the adolescents and young people. However, there are many remaining challenges, such as harmful practices, child marriage, FGM, lack of youth-friendly services, lack of access to comprehensive sexuality education. They're still present. So my question is, what are the key things that needs to be changed in order to further promote the sexual and reproductive health and rights of the adolescents and young people? And if you can give us a bit of key examples in practical terms. You have the floor, Lucy.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Peter. And really excited to kick off this discussion. I think we've spent a lot of time over the last weeks and months really thinking about how we can center young people's voices on SRHR and all the issues that matter to us. We know this comes at a critical moment. You know, we're 30 years into ICPD, and I always think about it, how many of us as young people even born when countries came together to decide this agenda. So it's really important that we also actually as young people start to think, well, what does ICPD mean for us? What does a future focused ICPD agenda look like? And how can it truly respond to and reflect our current realities when it comes to our sexual and reproductive rights? And some of the challenges we face are not new. Some of these have been going on for a long time, 30 years plus. You know, the fight for bodily autonomy, to tackle FGM, for young people to actually have the right to access information and services without being told, you're too young, you need to bring a parent along with you, where's your guardian? Or, you know, this isn't something that you should learn about. You know, you can talk about your body later when you're married. These are things that young people have experienced for decades. But we're also seeing new challenges. We're seeing the way in which digital spaces they provide opportunities for us to access information, but they're not always safe spaces. They're spaces where, you know, we're seeing pushback as activists, particularly in SRHR. We're seeing, you know, false information shared as well. And we're seeing, you know, platforms being given to voices of anti-rights movements who are not interested in us being able to access our reproductive rights, but rather to force us down avenues and force us down routes of information that actually don't empower us, that don't give us information, that don't give us choices. So it's a new frontier in many ways. There are definitely new challenges that we face. And I think there are a couple of things I really wanted to highlight. I think when we talk about sexual and reproductive health and rights, we need to also think more holistically. So we need to talk about the issues that often get kind of forgotten from the conversation. We need to talk about menstrual justice, for example. We need to talk about period poverty and the ability of young people to actually, you know, access services, access commodities in their time of need. We need to recognize that we are living in a very different world. So, how are we actually protecting our sexual and reproductive rights in the face of climate change, in the face of humanitarian crises? I think a lot of us as activists have reflected on what we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic. And sometimes that feels like a long time ago. But for me, it definitely showed us the fragility of these systems. All the barriers that we face suddenly came all at once. You know, suddenly you can't get to services. Suddenly our sexual and reproductive rights are deprioritized. And how do we make sure that we're building more resilient futures for ourselves so that these don't affect future young people? We have a responsibility to bring these issues to the forefront. And then I think we're seeing, unfortunately, a real reduction in political will and investment in SRHR. You know, countries have made commitments, but sometimes translating commitments into implementation, into action, and sustaining that progress is a real challenge. So, you know, some of us would reflect, I guess, that we see in global spaces, maybe our countries saying about the wonderful progress they've made. But when we come back down to country level, there's often other priorities, other issues. So I think, you know, we need to start tackling that. We need to think, what can we do to re-energize political will as young people? And we're all citizens. We're hopefully either voters or we will be voters. And how do we really raise our voices up in these processes to really shape the political systems around us? And we've seen how young people have done this to really good effect. So we've seen the green wave in Latin America. We've seen what's happening in France about actually kind of enshrining abortion in law. But we've also seen how some of that can be reversed and some of these gaps. So we need to keep up our energy and we need to keep moving forward. And then I'm sure we'll come back to this a bit more, but I think the anti-rights movement, the pushback and dilution of commitments, and kind of, you know, I think these are things that we as young people really need to grapple with. And if we don't have a voice on it and we don't have a strong movement to actually kind of push back against the pushback, then we will lose a lot of what we have fought so long for. And then I just wanted to finally talk about meaningful youth participation. So I think all of us on this call will probably say we know that meaningful youth participation at all levels is critical for SRHR policies and programs that meet our needs, that center our priorities, and actually ensure that they're fit for purpose. But we're seeing challenges for youth movements and youth-led organizations as well when it comes to the kind of sustainable funding and support we need to do our work. So there is really a call here, I think, to governments, to donors, to civil society to put these things on the table. You know, don't expect us to be able to shape the world around us if you're not resourcing us and you're not supporting us to do that and allowing us to bring through new generations of young people to lead the way. And then finally, one last thing, just to bring this to a close, I guess, to say that we really also need to be thinking beyond our silo. So we need to anchor young people's sexual and reproductive health and rights in key policy frameworks, in key policy agendas. So on human rights, we need to be there talking about reproductive justice and our sexual and reproductive rights. When conversations are happening about universal health coverage, we need to be there and saying, you know, actually, as young people, we have health needs and we have health rights, and you need to look at these and you need to center them in UHC. And then we need to be in these conversations when it comes to financing and economics and talking about the fact that actually these are critical social issues that must be considered when we're talking about economics. It's not about just business, it's not about, you know, economies that kind of work for profit and work for capitalism, but we actually need to be talking about what kind of economies, what kind of financing can really support us to realize our sexual and reproductive rights, but all our rights. And I'm sure many of the speakers who will come after me will talk about the importance of investing in education, the importance of, you know, investing in all these things that for young people are enablers for us to realize our rights and choices and to determine our own futures. So just a little bit of food for thought for this conversation, but I'm hoping that you can really have your voices heard as we move towards Benin, but also beyond, to really think, how can we as a movement come together and push a new vision and a new narrative for ICPD that will make our government stand up and listen and be heard, and to really put SRHR back at the center of these discussions.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for this, I would say, a long list of key issues that you have raised. At least I have a long list. I'm sure that audience as well, and many questions will come. But let me just like very quickly highlight some of the very key things that you have mentioned, among others. It's about misinformation. We live in a digital world where misinformation is really the hindering the quality information, especially when it comes to sexual and reproductive health rights. On the top of this is the anti-rights movement agenda. And thank you so much for mentioning this. What about the missing piece, as you said, like access to commodity services, but also the mega trends such as climate change and conflicts? All of these are absolutely cross-cutting issues. And, you know, the accelerators that you also mentioned about access to financing, you know, the prevention of shrinking spaces for civil society organizations, and also the impact of young people living in conflict and the access to quality education, and everything, how we can build, you know, whatever is at the global, how we can bring it to the local level. So thank you so much. And speaking of quality education, I would like to ask Abdul as our next speaker. You have been quite involved in track 2, which very much speaks about access to education. And we all agree, I believe, that quality education is crucial for sustainable development. And we're still learning from the many challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemics, and what needs to be reformed further. How do you see the future of the education and its linkages to ICPD agenda? And let me be more concrete. What do you think, and how do you think access to comprehensive sexuality education, whether in or out of school, can be instrument for that? You have the floor, Abdul.
Thank you for the excellent question, Peter. First of all, I would like to echo what my colleague Lucy just stated about the meaningful youth participation. It's one of the most vital things that we need to ensure in order to have a successful global youth dialogue, but also to create a successful future for all of us. And I would also like to say it's an honor to be invited to this important global conversation prior to the Global Youth Dialogue in Cotonou. But as you already stated, education is crucial in ensuring sustainable development. But to ensure quality education, we need to focus on several different aspects. Initially, I would like to say that quality education, including primary and secondary education, vocational training, and higher education, really equips individuals with the knowledge and skills needed to access healthcare services, to understand their rights, and make informed choices about their reproductive rights. And more specifically, integrating comprehensive sexuality education systems globally will actually empower all young persons in all their diversities with knowledge and skills to make informed decisions about their sexual and reproductive health. And it will also contribute to achieving the ICPD goals. So in a way, you could actually say that the future of education and the ICPD agenda are actually closely linked together to the goals and principles of the ICPD. But as I said, we have still several different aspects that we need to cover. And when talking about the future of education, it's furthermore important to also ensure that it's inclusive, so it can accommodate to all the needs of learners, including those from marginalized groups and vulnerable groups that are most oftenly not heard enough. It's also important to ensure that it provides lifelong learning opportunities so that the individuals of all ages have access to the information and skills to understand their rights. And also, if I can continue, when talking about the future, it's also important to really focus on the impacts of digitalization. The technology and the innovation of today really has the potential to transform education and widely enhance the access to resources and information worldwide. As Lucy also said, the global pandemic of the COVID-19 had several difficulties and issues that it brought along, but it also showed us a world of digitalization, having education on an online platform. And this is something that we really need to use the momentum that we learned from the COVID to transform the way that we think about education globally. We need to focus on integrating digital educational tools and create online platforms or other innovative approaches to the educational curriculum so we can expand access to quality education and, more importantly, work across borders so we can create a mutual global understanding of the common issues that we face as youth. And hopefully it'll also create a global, strong youth voice that will not only transform education, but also the world that we live in. And to briefly give you short information about the Transforming Education track, it's a track that will include a plenary that will focus more broadly on education as the way to create quality education and employment opportunities that empower young people. We'll also touch base on the impacts of both formal and non-formal education in a panel that will include both ministers and youth speakers. And the track will also include 3 concurrent sessions that will focus on different thematics within the future of education. First, there'll be a session on how to do gender transformative education that will focus on the power of gender transformative education and the way that it challenges the current gender stereotypes. Secondly, there will also be a session on comprehensive sexuality education and its ability to uphold rights and choices. And lastly, there will be a session on the trade-offs of the future generations. This is a concurrent session that will focus on the path from education to fulfilling a career in this rapidly changing world of work. So it's a session that will have a special focus on both how families and fertilities actually can affect this path. So lastly, I would just like to say that I hope to see as many of you at our sessions, both online and in person.
Thank you so much, Abdul, for this comprehensive outline and also as well touching upon very crucial points. And I very much agree with you. Like, we want an education that is inclusive, and as UNFPA always refer, we should not leave anyone behind. That means none of the population out there should be for any way left behind. So for us, exactly what you said, lifelong learning, non-formal education, absolutely crucial. And it's great that this will be further discussed, and it's going to be visible how they will fit into the ICPD agenda further. The role of the digitalization is so crucial, and it's coming more and more in the world that we live in. And as you said, digitalization can be great and can be very impactful, but also can be unfortunately used as a misinformation. And I invite everyone who is on the webinar today to check UNFPA's My Body Right campaign, which is exactly presenting some of the work on how, for instance, technology facilitated gender-based violence harness and hinders the impact of that. And you can check there that more than 80% of women and girls actually have been victims of technology facilitated GBV. So this is definitely very alarming, and we're very excited that this is really much what will be discussed. And we invite everyone here on the webinar today also to ask the questions and to present some of the work that you have been doing. And speaking of justice and human rights, this leads me to our next speaker, Gilma. You have been quite involved on track 3, which focusing on promoting human rights and advancing gender equality, as well as achieving racial justice. Drawing from your extensive experience and the e-powerful work that you have been involved in the region of Latin America and the Caribbean, what strategies do you believe are crucial in addressing the issues that I have just mentioned? And just to name again a few of them: gender-based violence, stigma and discrimination, especially among left-behind populations such as LGBTQI plus persons, access to SRH services for young people living with HIV. Additionally, how we can effectively counter the rise of the anti-rights movement and reshape their narrative surrounding these critical issues. You have the floor, Gilma.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone. I am so happy to be here. I will speak in Spanish, so we can change the interpretation. So, gracias por estar acá en este panel. Un poco como Peter habló, estoy encargada y estuve construyendo todo el panel que habla sobre radical inclusión. Y es importante entender también que la radical inclusión considera también todas las voces y perspectivas, incluidas las personas que históricamente han sido marginalizadas y excluidas, y en ese caso, las personas que históricamente han sido excluidas de esos espacios son las personas afrodescendientes, personas indígenas, personas con discapacidad, personas de la diversidad sexual y las personas trans. Entonces también es súper importante que esas personas estén en la mesa y no solo en la mesa, en la participación, sino que estén construyendo. Entonces también una de las cosas que vinculo es que una de las cosas que valoro en la construcción del debate que vamos a hacer en Conotú es que la agenda se construyó a partir de las personas también que históricamente no han sido marginalizadas. Tuvimos una participación bastante activa en la construcción de la agenda y eso es súper importante y valioso para que cuando vayamos también traer nuestros aportes. Después, una otra cosa también que creo que es interesante es entender que es a partir de la identificación de esos grupos que podemos abordar las causas profundas y los desafíos vinculados a la agenda internacional de población y desarrollo. Entonces es importante también que estemos en el debate para traer buenas prácticas que también se está realizando en distintas regiones. En la región, por ejemplo, de Latinoamérica, tenemos un marco súper importante que es el Consenso de Montevideo, que es uno de los documentos más avanzados en la región para trabajar acceso a derechos sexuales y reproductivos. Hay un capítulo específico también que trabaja las temáticas de poblaciones indígenas, de poblaciones afrodescendientes. Entonces siento también que es muy rico y es un aporte también que la región puede traer a cómo se avanzamos o cómo se puede avanzar dentro de la agenda de población y desarrollo. Con relación a la promoción de la igualdad de género, tenemos muchos desafíos. Nuestra región de Latinoamérica y el Caribe contamos con altos indicadores también de violencia basadas en el género. Y si pensamos lo que sería las variantes étnico-raciales, también tenemos una violencia de género, que también es una violencia racial, donde las mujeres también afrodescendientes sufren y se potencia dentro de esa violencia. Los países que pueden generar datos estadísticos específicos sobre eso ya relatan que hay un índice mayor en las poblaciones afrodescendientes indígenas y también mujeres con discapacidad y mujeres trans. Entonces también siento que es importante que dentro de pensar la equidad de género, es importante entender que las mujeres no somos un grupo igualitario, que somos un grupo súper diverso y que muchas veces necesitamos atenciones especiales. Una otra cosa también que traigo al debate es que la región, al menos la región también de Latinoamérica, contamos con un avance de gobiernos autoritarios y antiderechos. Entonces también es importante que nos unifiquemos como región, que podamos pensar estrategias en conjuntas desde la sociedad civil, desde la cooperación internacional y desde los estados que tienen un gobierno un poco más democrático y que piensa los derechos humanos, para pensar estrategias de cómo eso se aplica en gobiernos donde no se respetan los derechos humanos, como en Latinoamérica existen. Después, una otra cosa también que siento que es importante para también avanzar en la agenda y siento que es un aporte, es la integral participación de las juventudes, tanto en esos diálogos como en la Cumbre del Futuro, como en el Foro de Países. Todos esos espacios son importantes para que podamos tener una participación activa, para que podamos traer buenas prácticas, para que podamos encontrar vínculos en común y ver también cómo podemos avanzar, hacen incidencia dentro de los estados. Es importante porque también va a fomentar el sentido de responsabilidad y empoderamiento de las generaciones, que es algo que históricamente han pasado en varias de las conferencias también que se están armando. Siento que muchas veces se repite que la juventud es el futuro, pero no somos solo el futuro, somos el pasado, somos el presente y también necesitamos un diálogo generacional e intergeneracional, porque también las personas que hoy son adultas eran las personas jóvenes de antes y ellas tienen mucho que aportar a también cómo se construye la agenda actualmente. Eh, Creo que es importante reconocer y también estimular o pensar que los estados también tienen una responsabilidad súper importante si pensamos la agenda de población en desarrollo, en cómo también se aplica a nivel presupuestario. Es importante también hablar de cómo los derechos humanos también están siendo financiados y cuál es el papel, el rol del Estado dentro de la participación activa, y esa participación activa no tiene que ser solo en normativa, sino también a nivel económico. Es importante que los estados inviertan en políticas públicas, en políticas afirmativas, para que también la agenda, tanto de la ICPD como de otras agendas también que están en marcha, sean reales. Bueno, creo que por ahora sería como esa breve introducción. Igual también estoy acá para si alguien también tiene alguna consulta, alguna pregunta en específico. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Dilma, for this, I would say, very interesting and quite crucial food for thoughts, and that you very much highlighted. Let me reiterate what you mentioned about that left behind populations were the core of this agenda. They should stay there, and they were very much behind building it. And also that you touch upon the, among other things, about the importance of intergenerational dialogue. And when it comes to human rights, what is the role of that? Thank you so much. And since you also touch upon some of the challenges that young people are still facing, such as migration, I'm moving to our next speaker, Simon, and you have been quite involved in the issues around that. And we know that our worlds, and in our world, many young people and adolescents, unfortunately, are facing and being forced to live in the zones of conflict, or being forced to migration due to various reasons, or experiencing the impact of climate change. Given these pressing issues, why track 4 that you're working on together with other partners is so essential for shaping the future of the ICPD agenda? You have the floor, Simone.
Thank you, Peter, for this excellent question. Hi, everyone. My name is Simone Diouf. Coming from a Francophone country, I will continue my speech in French, so please use the interpretation. Alors, je suis ravie de participer à cette conversation en ligne en prélude du dialogue mondial de la jeunesse. Le monde actuel fait face à des crises croissantes, à des conflits violents qui impactent fortement les jeunes qui se retrouvent en première ligne face à ces défis sans précédent. Par exemple, dans ma région Afrique francophone, les jeunes constituent la majorité de la population, mais cette région est marquée par un manque criard d'opportunités économiques pour eux, un fort taux de chômage, des problèmes d'insécurité, notamment la montée de l'extrémisme violent, des attaques terroristes, l'immigration clandestine et le changement climatique. Au niveau mondial, les guerres sont de plus en plus nombreuses. La prolifération des urgences humanitaires est inquiétante et des déplacements de population ou migration sont à noter. Ça fait que notre planète maintenant est marquée par l'incertitude et l'instabilité. Cependant, les jeunes à travers le monde ont montré une étonnante résilience qui est un atout indispensable pour façonner un avenir paisible, prospère et durable. Donc, afin de discuter de cette question dans le cadre du dialogue mondial des jeunes qui se tiendra à Cotonou, la semaine prochaine, il est prévu d'avoir un volet qui est intitulé « S'adapter, prospérer, inspirer, construire des avenirs résilients dans un monde en crise ». C'est le volet 4 qui est composé d'une séance plénière et de 3 sessions simultanées, concurrent sessions. La séance plénière du volet 4 a pour objectif déjà d'offrir une plateforme d'apprentissage, d'échange et d'action qui vise à amplifier les voix des jeunes qui sont acteurs de changement à travers un dialogue intergénérationnel. En effet, la séance plénière va s'efforcer de créer un environnement propice pour favoriser le contact, les conversations et les discussions positives entre les jeunes et les alliés non jeunes qui travaillent à l'épanouissement des actions menées par les jeunes. Donc, cette session va également célébrer l'action transformatrice des jeunes qui font face à l'adversité avec courage, créativité et détermination. Donc, les intervenants qui seront à Cotonou la semaine prochaine pour ce volet 4-là vont présenter des initiatives innovantes, transformatrices pour atténuer l'impact des crises, des conflits et favoriser la résilience au sein des communautés. En plus de la séance plénière, qui va regrouper plus d'une centaine de jeunes, le volet 4 est aussi composé de 3 séances simultanées auxquelles 150 jeunes pourront participer. Ces sessions simultanées aborderont les questions de paix et de sécurité, de migration, d'urgence humanitaire, mais aussi de changement climatique et d'urbanisation. Donc, elles vont ressembler à des sessions de travail. Parce que l'idée, c'est vraiment de créer un espace qui va permettre aux participants d'approfondir les conversations sur un sujet spécifique. Ça peut être la paix, l'agenda jeunesse, paix et sécurité, la migration, etc. Donc, on veut discuter, formuler des recommandations clés sur les sujets discutés et on veut aussi que ces recommandations soient incluses dans le document final. Donc, pour nous, il est essentiel que ce volet sur la résilience des jeunes soit présent lors du dialogue de Cotonou. Comme vous le savez, en avril 2024, la 57e session de la Commission sur la population et le développement, CPD, sera consacrée à l'évaluation des 30 ans de la mise en œuvre du programme d'action de la CIPD, ICPD en anglais. Donc, le dialogue mondial de Cotonou va favoriser les discussions entre de nombreux acteurs et spécialistes afin de constituer une base de connaissances mondiales au service de la mise en œuvre de ce programme. Donc, le dialogue va donner aussi l'occasion de revigorer et d'étendre la communauté ICPD pour agir plus efficacement et renforcer l'engagement politique en faveur de la mise en œuvre du programme après 2024. Donc, les recommandations du dialogue mondial, notamment de la session du volet 4 sur la résilience des jeunes, seront prises en compte dans le rapport de synthèse mondiale de la ICPD30 qui fera autorité au sujet de la mise en œuvre du programme. C'est dans ce sens que le volet 4 sur la résilience des jeunes est crucial, parce qu'il célèbre la résilience des jeunes, il cherche à amplifier leur voix et à mettre en lumière la collaboration intergénérationnelle qui peut ouvrir la voie à la paix, à la durabilité. Donc, il est impératif que cette thématique, ce volet 4, soit pris en compte dans le rapport mondial qui devra identifier et traiter les difficultés et les possibilités émergentes pour accélérer la mise en œuvre du programme d'action ICPD. Donc, de mon côté, je suis confiante que les discussions qui auront lieu lors des plénières et des sessions simultanées à Cotonou conduiront à des recommandations concrètes et réalistes qui seront formulées par les jeunes et les adolescents qui seront présents à Cotonou. Et pour répondre à la question de Mme Djene Keita, qui est une grande alliée des jeunes, dont je salue le leadership, la question est la suivante. Qu'est-ce que nous voulons? Eh bien, Madame Djene Keita, nous voulons que le leadership des jeunes en matière de paix et de sécurité, la question du changement climatique, des migrations et leur impact négatif sur les jeunes soit une préoccupation centrale dans le programme d'action de la CIPD. Ce sont des questions transversales qui doivent être analysées et solutionnées de manière multidimensionnelle. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. You have the floor, Peter.
Thank you so much, Simon, for highlighting some important issues and very much highlighting that resilience starts from the community. And if we empower communities, we can ensure that we can have peaceful societies on a later stage, but also that youth-based security is really a crucial element as part of the ICPD agenda. And also something that you said in the beginning, that youth are at the front of it. And saying this leads me, of course, to our last but not the least speaker, Monse, who is very much involved in track 5, which emphasizes the significance of harnessing the power of 1.9 billion young people out there. So, dear Monse, why do you think it's so crucial that young people, along with youth organizations and youth networks, should still be at the heart of the ICPD agenda? How do you see their role in the next 7 years, also in the lead up to the end of the 2030 development agenda, the SDGs? And last but not the least, what are the missing mechanisms currently that prevent meaningful youth engagement, especially when we talk about national and local level? You have the floor.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone for joining us. I am beyond honored to be leading the track 5 because, as you know, and you heard every single panelist here, we talked and we really are pushing for youth empowerment during the youth forum. On my opinion, it is crucial for young people to remain on the center of the ICPD agenda because we are currently the largest demographic cohort globally, meaning that our active involvement ensures that policies and programs are not only relevant, but also effective in addressing the needs and aspirations that we all have as young people in our many different backgrounds. By engaging young people and youth organizations, we tap into our energy, our creativity, and unique perspectives. And we ensure that the ICPD agenda remains inclusive and sustainable approach. I think that the way that I envision young people in the next 7 years, we already have seen participants and we already have seen young people being empowered from all over the place. And a great example could be every single young person in this webinar, in this panel. Young people are becoming more the center of things rather than staying on the sidelines. So for the next 7 years, I really envision young people to increasingly prominent role in shaping and implementing the ICPD agenda. Moving beyond being more participants to becoming the leaders and decision makers our communities and countries need. Empower ourselves with the skills and knowledge and resources that will drive innovative solutions to address these pressing issues. It's time for young people to extend their role as advocacy makers to an active participation in policy formulation, in program design and implementation. This will ensure that our voices are heard and that our contributions are also valued. One of the things that my colleagues on the panel have also mentioned, and Peter, you just asked on what are the currently mechanisms that we are missing or that maybe are not perfect yet on ensuring youth engagement. And I think that despite the recognition of the importance of youth engagement that we have had for the last couple of years, we really do need to ensure that we are still significant on youth engagement and that there are barriers preventing meaningful participation yet, and we still need to work on them. For example, we have, as Lucy said, the limited access to information and resources. How are we ensuring that young people have access to meaningful resources, that they don't lack relevant information and the resources needed to be actual decision makers, as well as institution barriers? We still are looking into many institutions that lack formal mechanisms to ensure youth engagement, making it difficult for young people to actually influence policies, decision-making programs, and it's really affecting them in every single background. We also have tokenism approaches, meaning that meaningful opportunities are being given, meaning that meaningful opportunities are not being given even if we have the space. So yes, we want to see young people on spaces but we want their participation to be meaningful, to be taken into account, to be valued. It was also mentioned by one of my colleagues, the lack of capacity building. And there's a need of capacity building that equips young people not only on the skills and the knowledge, but also on the confidence of themselves, that they can influence these policymaking spaces and that they can be part of these processes that will influence their future. And one other that I really want to mention is ageism and discrimination. We're still facing a lot of negative stereotypes, and discrimination-based age often undermine young people's credibility and ability to be part of these spaces. So how our policies and how our structures actually equipped to face ageism and discrimination. I think that by addressing these missing mechanisms, we need to involve government, civil society organization, and other stakeholders so we enable environments for youth participation. I think I believe that we do need to unlock the full potential of young people as drivers of positive change, and trust that every process that we have made during the last couple of years, it needs to be improved. We still have many years, 7 to be exact, for 2030, and we have still many opportunities to improve those places, to make sure that governments, civil society organizations, communities are stakeholders to this change. And I think the youth forum is a great example on how important it is to take into account young people's voices and participation, and how are we opening these spaces for them to have their voices heard and their participation value. Thank you, Peter. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Monse. I think we all agree with you, and we do hope that we'll get some answer of this question and practical steps after Benin and the conversation afterwards about how we can prevent this lack of mechanisms for, or maybe strengthen the mechanism for meaningful youth engagement. And as you said, by investing in capacity building, it's one of the instruments that we should definitely recognize, especially for a community-led organization working at the national and local level. Thank you so much, Monse. Also, thank you so much for all the panelists that you're simultaneously answering the questions that are upcoming, I would say every second. So thank you so much also to the audience for your active participation. And please feel free to continue asking your questions. We'll make sure that all of them are answered. Now, let me share my screen, because we would like to also to hear from you and everyone who had the time to join us today about your vision. And we want to make sure that we'll bring this word cloud back to Benin, and then present some of your key priorities for the future of ICPD. And if you can choose one, what would it be? You can use the Mentimeter by going to menti.com and using the code that you see at the top of the screen. So we'll give a couple of seconds so everyone can go and share one key priority for the future of the ICPD. I know it's a tough one, and we understand that it's difficult to choose, but as we said, it's only part of the whole piece that we would like to put together as the future of the ICPD. So let's give a couple of more seconds. And then we'll make sure, of course, that after the webinar, you will be getting some of the results. We have equality, reproductive health, diversity, LGBTQI plus rights, CSC, digital SRHR, bodily autonomy, climate justice, climate and SRHR, women's rights, Sexuality education is coming up again. Queer movements, academic freedom, and more and more. And many of these topics have been already touched upon by our panelists, so we are very happy that we're on the same page. And I'm sure that our panelists today who will be in Benin will serve as ambassadors of these key priority themes that they will bring back to the discussion in Benin and make sure that they find a crucial point in the discussion and whatever comes out of Benin. So this link will be active for another couple of days. So feel free to share with your peers and everyone you think that should have a voice, because this is, as we said, and our Deputy Executive Director, Diana Kita, mentioned, this is your agenda. So we really want to highlight the ownership. It's in your hands, and the future, how it should be shaping is really very much depending on your vision. And I'm sure that everyone would like to hear that. Thank you so much for that. I think it's a beautiful word cloud with key elements that we should definitely have into consideration. I will stop presenting for now because of time. Again, thank you so much to all the panelists today for your active contribution and for being there with us. Thank you so much.
All done, all fantastic. Sorry, Peter, but I was so
No, please, Diana.
all these young people. Your presentation were all very good, very up to the point, from Lucy ones to Montserrat ones. Well done, well done. Really counting on you to change the world. This is your world. Change it for us. Thank you. Muchísimas gracias. Merci beaucoup. À bientôt. Au revoir.
Thank you so much, Diana, as well. And now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Eliseo Chavez Jr., who is the Global ICPD 30 Coordinator, who will be sharing with us some closing remarks and setting up the stage what's next. Eliseo, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Peter. And after our Deputy Executive Director, I don't believe I have too much else to say. And after this amazing panel, just, I mean, two things. First, a big thank you to all of you. We wouldn't be able to be where we are now without the engagement of young people, including from UNFPA, but also especially our partners to build this Global Youth Dialogue. We don't want it to be just a Global Youth Dialogue in Benin, although we are very excited about going to Cotonou and working so hard in close collaboration with the government of Benin. But we want it to be really an avenue for the youth to get engaged into the future of this agenda. So that's very important for us. And second, linked to the first one, it doesn't end here, it doesn't end in Benin. I think we do need you to continue working with us to promote what the ICPD stands for. And it's the first and the most important platform agreed by 179 governments in 1994 that links population development and human rights into the same platform. And for us, it's an agenda that is people-centered. It's a development agenda that is people-centered. This is why it's so unique for everybody, and especially for young people. So thank you so much. I really look forward to continue engaging with all of you. Thank you, Peter, for your moderation. Really appreciate it. See you soon.
Thank you so much, Eliseo. Thank you, everyone, again, for being with us for the last hour. See some of you in Benin. See you online. Follow the Global Citizen Partnership that we are launching next week. And thank you so much for your wisdom and inspiration. Have a great day.